Detroit was one of the USA's fastest growing cities. It was home to the big three car manufacturers, home to Tamla Motown. It was growing so fast at one point they were bulldozing parks and gardens to make way for the freeways. And then it collapsed.
A car comes off the end of the line every 10 seconds.
Detroit went from 2 million people to about 900,000, and there's about 30% unemployment there. And it was in serious danger of being the first US city to literally fall off the map because city blocks and buildings and shops and stuff were literally being overtaken by nature. I mean, this is not Machu Picchu or Atlantis or Babylon. This is actually happening in our lifetime. Over 500,000 people in Detroit live in what's called a food desert, which means it takes twice as long for them to get to a food outlet like a supermarket than it takes them to get to a fringe outlet like a gas station. Without adequate access to good food, there are real hunger issues in Detroit. But unlike any other city in the world, the Urban Farms project has taken hold not as a hobby or a sideline, but as a model for actually rebuilding the city. People are surviving off the food grown in these gardens. And that's what's so amazing about this whole thing. You can never suppress the human spirit.
I try to look at all the good things and not worry about the bad. I figure if we can, you know, get everything to look good and make everything nice, then all the bad stuff will kind of go away a little bit.
We're in Detroit, in Georgia Street, at the community centre, creating a garden for local residents.
Community gardens and personal gardens and market gardens, they're a really important part of rebuilding the health and vitality of the city.
I think it's about people doing stuff for themselves and actually using their initiative and, you know, making things a bad situation like better. The band's brief was a struggle against adversity, and I think this was a real struggle. It wasn't a political struggle, it was more situational than anything else, and I felt it could sort of happen to any country, anywhere, so it's sort of a message more than anything that if you get off your arse, you know, you can make things a little bit better for yourself.
Machines do more and more of the hard work these days. For instance, here's the way the assembly.
We're talking about a third of this city now is actually derelict, and you know, it's about sort of making people proud of their environment and that sort of thing. And when you're living next to some burnt out houses, I assume it must be pretty fucking hard, really, to sort of, you know, get up in the morning and I don't know what you do. I can't even get my head around it still, to be honest.
The old term is white flight, you know, when the city has been hollowing out for 50, 60 years, actually. It's been dropping in population that long, and it's just been a very long, slow disaster, sort of, in the sense of, you know, what we see here, what you see in places like New Orleans where Katrina hit. But there's been no natural disaster. It's just been a very long, slow decline with people that do have money and resources leaving the city.
It is very emotional. It's like, until you actually see it, and you just can't see how vast it is. Even in films you see, and in Julian Temple's Requiem for Detroit, it really, as much as it shows how bad it is, you just can't see it until you see it yourself, and you're driving down every road and these just burnt out buildings, one after the other.
The decay is overwhelming, you know, so if you try to, you know, contrast what looks good and what looks bad, you know, it actually kind of make you want to give up to a certain extent.
Well, these community activities are in my opinion, they're going to be the backbone of the rebuilding of Detroit.
Well, I'm a founder and chairman of Georgia Street Community Collective, Georgia Street Community Gardens. And I guess my role is to help revitalize our neighborhood.
Mark, who runs the Georgia Street Community Collective, was quite an inspirational character, that someone was doing it for himself.
Mark's an amazing guy, and to sort of re-energize a space by putting people back into it, doing positive work is really, really essential, and that's what's great about the whole movement in Detroit.
The rebuilding of community means everything. The way I was raised and how I was brought up with a community. It wasn't just my mother and my father and my grandmother. I had brothers and sisters and friends that I grew up with, and then we had people that we called aunt and uncles, in the neighborhood. And, I was raised by the whole village. I wasn't just raised by my family. And so I want to kind of get the kids, that's growing up now in the neighborhood, the same feeling. That they don't have to look at it as it's just being them and their family, that, it's people outside walking up and down the street that care about them too.
Our first priority is to build community. And so getting people out doing things together is how you build community. You've got to actually go out and do something.
And it feels like me on a good day.
It's going to be more of a closer knit community. Instead of moving away, they'll be moving into the neighborhood.
It's quite nice that band actually had the balls to sort of invest in someone else's ideas for change.
I hope that this shows other record labels that, hey, this is what we should be doing with our money. You can do something that matters for, a third of the money that you're going to spend. So help out the people, show the people that we care, and the people, and the people can do amazing things.
It's a blessing. It's just a gift, truly a gift from God.
On a good day.
It's just going to make a brighter spot in our neighborhood, to grow from.